hear us but not see us. It says that we are live. So
Okay,
that's good.
cool.
Which we definitely remember to do last time.
Yes.
Oh shit, we're live. So no. Oh.
All right, we already have a message from Paul Sorrells. It says, as today is May the 4th, Spielberg helped create the final set pieces in Revenge of the Sith. Please spend 5 minutes glorifying this epic film. That will not be happening.
He did more than the final set piece, actually.
Are you
He
serious?
did a lot. He did more. He did a lot of the previs on it in general. So like the opening set piece too, actually, when they're just flying around and stuff. You can.
That set piece is really good too.
Yeah,
like I was watching that not that long ago, and I was like, "This is the most fun I've had in any of these prequels, and the most fun any of these actors have had like, this entire time."
Well,
and we're on number 3.
It's just the part I think where he was they're mostly Lucas, but like you can see in that opening section when they're flying around, like it has kind of the sort of untethered camera. You see in a lot of Spielberg's, like you see it later in Tintin and Ready Player One. He kind of experiments. He's doing a lot of CGI. You can see it start there with his work in Revenge of the Sith, actually, which is kind of cool. Yeah, but yeah, I don't know.
All right.
This is not going in the podcast, but it is going to the live feed. So consider yourself.
If anyone's
lucky.
listening, congratulations. You got to hear brief thoughts on Revenge of the Sith. I, meanwhile, made a snarky tweet about how shitty Rise of Skywalker is.
Oh, yeah.
And immediately was beset upon. So I deleted it because I was then concerned, like, oh, is everyone going to think I'm actually hoping these people die friendless and alone?
Oh, yeah.
So
yeah, you put like 200% too much energy into that tweet, Brian. I saw it before it was deleted.
Did you hear the thing about Abrams showing? Did you hear the thing about Abrams showing Rise of Skywalker to Spielberg?
No, what was that?
No. So basically, apparently, this is how the story goes. I don't know if it's necessarily true, but apparently, because in the final cut, you have that. Do you remember Babu Frick, that little alien guy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So apparently, he just kind of disappeared in the movie. Like he just was like, you just see him in that one sequence early on the film, and then he's just kind of just gone. And then Spielberg apparently the only thing he said to Abrams after the film was finished was, "What happened to Babu Frick?" And so he put that little thing where he pops up again at the end, the last set piece.
Oh my god, that's terrible. I hate that so much. All right, we should. Interesting as this is, we should get to our actual show. So yeah, I think we are good to go. Let me just pull up one thing, and then we should be good to go. So I'll count us down, and then we'll kick it in. So, starting in 5, 4, 3.
Okay.
Today's episode of the Film Stage Show is brought to you by Mubi, the online streaming cinema. For your free 30-day trial, go to mubi.com/filmstage.
Here they come again. Catch us if you can. Time to get a move on. We were young with all of our might. Catch us if you can.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to a brand new episode of the Film Stage Show, the movie review podcast for thefilmstage.com. As always, I'm your host, Brian J. Rowan. With me today, we have Michael Snydell.
Hello.
Hello. We also have Bill Graham.
Woo, 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 woo.
And a special guest with us here today in order to review Steven Spielberg's 2002 film, Catch Me If You Can. It's Neil Badahur.
Yeah, hello. That's
Did I do that right?
not quite, but whatever. You can change it
Bahadur? We had a whole conversation about this, and I felt like I had it. But
you said Bahadur and it's Bahadur, but it's okay. You can change it.
No, I'm going to leave my mistaken because I'm a humble human being. Bahadur. My mistake, and I apologize. Here we are, talking about, again, another classic episode because it's still a shit show out there in the world at large. And we are here today to talk about, again, Catch Me If You Can, Leonardo DiCaprio's collaboration with Steven Spielberg and Tom Hanks. Before we get into that, the usual stuff. Find us on Twitter at Film Stage Show, Facebook, The Film Stage Show. Give us a comment and rating on iTunes. Email us, podcast@thefilmstage.com. You can become a patron of this here show by going to patreon.com/thefilmstageshow for as little as $1 an episode. You get access to our Slack channel and first crack at all of our raffles and such. We are also brought to you by Mubi, the online streaming cinema, where every day their fantastic curators bring you a brand new film to watch and enjoy. One of the films that they have just added to their slate is Beanpole, 2019 film. The synopsis is as follows. 1945, Leningrad, World War II, has devastated the city, demolished its buildings, and leaving its citizens in tatters physically and mentally. Two young women, Iya and Masha, search for meaning and hope in the struggle to rebuild their lives amongst the ruins. This, in addition to The Last Laugh by F.W. Murnau, who is also on there, and all 3 parts of Dead Souls. There's a whole bunch of other great stuff on there. Michael Snydell, I forget, did you ever get down to watching Southland Tales?
No, it's gone by the end of tonight's. Let's just, let's say I tried watching that and was expecting something more wacky and was surprised how soberly it started. But I don't know, I might get to it tonight, or I won't.
Or you won't. Another high-profile movie that our listeners may know that is currently on there, A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night by Anna Lily Amirpour, 2014. If you would like a free 30-day trial of Mubi, all you got to do is go to mubi.com/filmstage. Again, that is mubi.com/filmstage. And now that we've gone through all that, it's time for our coronavirus quarantine corner, where we can update the people at home on how we're doing, give an insight into our lives as we deal with all of this stuff that is going on. Let us begin with our guest, Neil Bahadur.
Yeah, how's it going?
How has the coronavirus affected your life? How are you doing?
Personally, I'm nothing to complain about. Obviously, it could be. I think it could be worse. I don't know how to put that actually. Maybe, but for me personally, I stay in a lot. I write, and I just kind of teach myself how to play the piano, and that's kind of it.
Is that going well?
But,
I used to play the cello, and there's a part of me that kind of wishes I still had my cello.
Oh, it's nice.
Yeah. So
I used to play the piano when I
well?
was a kid.
Okay.
Well, I used to play it when I was a kid, and then kind of stopped, and then I always kind of wanted to get back to it, and then now I have. So yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's been fun.
Well,
You people with productive quarantine hobbies are making me feel bad.
No.
I mean, I'm just out here making life-saving hand sanitizer for both people and institutions. So, Michael Snydell, I don't mean to make you feel bad, but
I thought you were humble. What happened to that, Brian? Bring that back.
No. Speaking of humble places, Michael Snydell, how are things in Chicago? I hear it's still terrible there.
It's still terrible here, and yeah, I've just become so neurotic about like I've been one of those people where I'll come out of my cave and go downstairs, and I'll be like, why doesn't that person have a mask? And I'm not saying it to them or anything, but I'm just like saying it under my breath, like the cantankerous hermit that I'm just fully embracing that identity.
Good times. Have you done anything interesting at all? Have you learned to play any kind of instrument, or are you just like letting your toenails grow really long?
I just want to let you know I actually looked down at my toenails when you asked me that question. No, I haven't really done anything interesting.
Fantastic. Bill Graham, how are things down in the Dallas area?
Things are good. We decided to open some of our businesses on Friday. I'm sure that was a shit show. Yeah, otherwise, my favorite taco joint is still closed. Very sad about that. Trying to get one of these comic book stores to open up so I can go buy some comics from them because I'm not buying them from Amazon. Other than that, everything's pretty decent over here. It's not too hot. Weather hasn't hit us too hard, so yeah.
Well,
that's good. Well, good for you.
Yeah.
So what did they selectively open? I'm curious.
Restaurants were open to 25% capacity, which basically means a lot of the restaurants were like, fuck that. We cannot do that. Malls were opened, again,
Really?
to 25% capacity in some, I don't know how they regulated that. And then a couple of other.
Considering that malls have like multiple ingress and egress points.
Yeah, I think mainly that was inside your stores. So individual stores had to probably adhere to social distancing, whereas, probably line up outside of the door. I'm sure the Apple store was a fucking madhouse. So, but yeah, so that's how things are going. Gyms and I think hair salons and a couple of other things are going to be down the line, so we'll see. But yeah, other than that, not a whole lot going on here.
Yeah, things have stalled pretty much everywhere. My distillery is finally giving out the hand sanitizers that we were able to produce for free through our fundraiser. So if you were listening and gave to that, thank you so much. If you have not yet, then go to schmidtspirits.com, schmidtspirits.com. I don't know why I had so much trouble spelling that. schmidtspirits.com, you'll find a link to our GoFundMe, and you can help us to give out free hand sanitizer in our area. We gave it out at our distillery, and we also gave it out at a local farmer's market and a local food pantry that, as you can imagine, is doing a lot more giving now that so many people are out of work. So hopefully we'll be able to keep doing that. And other than that, basically just trying to keep me and my daughter alive, doing the job.
Good. Yeah, that's good. Good for you.
it's so much. It's funny because like the first couple weeks of this were like, oh my god, everything's crazy. Can you believe it? And now it's weird how much of it has become routine.
Right, yeah. That was kind of inevitable, I think.
Yeah.
Just get used to it naturally, right?
Yep.
So someone said something funny the other day. They said the preparation I've done for video games to get ready to go to like a store or something like that. They're like, I had to jump through a lot more hoops in real life recently. Shit! Putting on the gloves, putting on the mask, making sure the social distancing, and it's just like, oh shit! Like there's a lot to go into this. And then the age old question for now is, oh, okay, I got all my groceries. Now what do I do with them? Do I
cook them?
Do I just keep them in there for 3 days? Maybe the non-perishables? Do I wipe every single thing down?
Oh, God, are people doing that?
Oh, yeah. That's what we do.
Oh, man. That sounds like hell. I'm being cautious but not crazy.
Yeah, that's good. The same with me.
Yeah, I mean, I could go nuts. Like, I could set up like an isolation chamber where I just leave my food for 3 days. But I'm not doing that. So yeah, that's our COVID corner update. Hopefully everyone else listening is being safe and smart. And I don't know. I hope that at some point soon we can start to get back to some shade of slight normalcy. But we'll see.
We'll see.
I finally got like a professionally made cloth mask today, and a dude in Target, when I went to Target real quick, asked me where I got it, and I felt weirdly proud. Yeah.
What makes it professionally made?
I don't know. I had to buy it from someone who presumably like used a sewing machine. Because my previous one was just I like cut 5 inches off of an old T-shirt I didn't wear anymore, and then just tied it behind the back of my head.
There you go.
But this one's got like elastic bands and shit.
Whoa.
I know. It goes around my ears. I'm sure I look like a complete and utter idiot. But anyway, that's not totally what we're here to talk about. We are here today to talk about Catch Me If You Can. Again, the 2002 film from director Steven Spielberg, based on the book by Frank Abagnale Jr., screenplay by Jeff Nathanson. This movie stars a bevy of people, most notably Leonardo DiCaprio, Tom Hanks, and Christopher Walken, and I'm sure we'll get into all the other amazing either famous people or soon-to-be famous people who starred in this movie as we talk about it. So here is a clip from the trailer.
Welcome to Miami Mutual Bank. How may I help you?
I'd like to cash this check here, and then I'd like to take you out for a steak dinner.
Are you a real live pilot?
I sure am, little lady.
The jump seat is open.
It's been a while since I've done this. Which one's the jump seat again?
Dr. Connors to the ER. Dr. Connors to the ER.
This is irrefutable evidence that the defendant is lying.
Special Agent Hanratty, FBI.
Hello, Carl.
You're gonna get caught. It's like Vegas. The hell's that?
All right. That's the trailer for Catch Me If You Can. This film is about Frank Abagnale Jr., a con man who traipses across the country, pursued by Carl Hanratty, played by Tom Hanks. He is a high school student who pretends to be a pilot, a lawyer, a doctor, amongst many other things. And we're here to talk about it. So, since this is a classic review, we're not going to really adhere to the concept of spoilers. I presume that the further we get in, the greater the chances that we're going to spoil the shit out of this movie. So if you haven't seen this movie yet, I don't know why you're listening to this. So just be aware. All right, let's dive right in. Neil Bahadur.
Yeah, it's me.
What are your thoughts on Catch Me If You Can?
Oh man, there's a lot. It's a. How do I start this? I don't know.
Like, what was this? So I'm curious, I guess. Did you see this in the theater, or is this one that you caught later? Like, what's your history with this movie?
I saw it probably when I was like, I didn't see it in the theater, but I would have been maybe 15 or so when I saw it, because I had the DVD of it. But I wasn't that crazy about it at the time. I was just kind of like, what? Like, he's just running around. Like, what is this? And then I think later on, I mean, I always liked Spielberg's movies, but I only came back to it around the end of 2018, and the TIFF Lightbox, like a retrospective of all Spielberg's films. So I was just like, I'm just going to go watch a bunch of these, and I watched this one again. And I was like, wait, this is so much more complicated and like kind of ingenious than I realized. It's obviously like one of, I think, the most obviously personal of Spielberg's films. You know, given his like relationship with his parents and so on, and when it's set, Spielberg would have been around the same age, I think, as Frank Abagnale Jr. But it's really interesting how it ties into Spielberg's like how telling it is with Spielberg in general, and the kind of one of his most kind of vicious kind of portraits of like American society in a way, and that like he's literally taking, you know, every job as a role and kind of succeeding at it. So this is a really interesting movie about like some of the core contradictions, I think, of American life, at least in this period, where like if you can fulfill like a social role within a given moment, you can essentially kind of like do anything. So you have the contradiction being that you're not actually free to do what you want as an American in the 60s, yet you can actually get away with anything. That's essentially what this movie's about.
All right, awesome. Yeah, that's a good deep read right up front.
That's cool. But yeah, I don't know. Like, there's always this really interesting kind of relationship towards work. That's really fascinating in this film. It kind of comes to a head in the end when Abagnale starts working for the FBI, and it's only he takes his first job only as a way to not be in jail, in prison. Yeah, but he still has the same kind of rules. He's like, you know, you're working 8:15 to 5 every day for the next 18 years. So that's a really interesting thing at the very end, where it's like work and prison are actually interchangeable. It's really fascinating.
There's totally a place like we can go into this further, but like this movie goes on about, I'm going to say 20 minutes longer than you expect. Its arc could go on in a really fascinating way, which we can get to later. But yeah, I just wanted to briefly mention that.
Oh yeah, totally. Most Spielberg goes on a bit longer than you expect it to, I find, especially around this period, like AI onwards, AI to Munich, really.
I mean, even beyond that, even Lincoln.
Yeah,
I wouldn't say maybe like 20 minutes, but definitely like.
Well, it's got an obvious end to it, and then so.
Yeah. Yep. All right, Michael Snydell, what about yourself? What do you think of Catch Me If You Can?
Yeah, I remember this being a hell of a lot of fun, but I didn't realize how much kind of teeth it had on this rewatch. Like I was really really taken aback, as Neil was kind of saying and piggybacking on that a little bit. Like the really like complicated view of institutions here. Like not only do you have, this interesting idea where you have Christopher Walken, what literally his first line is this joke that keeps occurring about, two mice and, what one drowned and the other made it into butter. And like, that seems to be playing so much with all of these bootstraps myths and things like that. And I find it so interesting that like even early on, Frank, in trying to be very sincere, like he's slick, but he does have good intentions in trying to help his family, and he can't get a loan. He can't. He can't move up no matter what he does. And I think just the notion then that like he goes through the run of like the avatars of American capitalism, a doctor, a lawyer, and a pilot. Like, short of being an astronaut, like he covers every childhood dream. So yeah, I was really, really impressed on this second go around. Yeah. How much more seems to be going on here, and just it was weird. I don't mean to like belabor the length because I think it earns it, but it's still pretty fascinating to me that I did not remember this being about 2 hours and 20 minutes.
Yeah, no, it feels like a tight 2 hours, really. I find.
Yeah. The performances. That's the other thing too. Leo is playing. All right, is he playing a 15-year-old? Is that what we're supposed to?
That's how it starts. I think he's 16 when the movie starts.
Yeah, I think he starts at 16 and then it goes on for a couple years.
And then he's done with everything by 19, according to that game show bit. Which, I might be pushing it a little bit, but he's really, really good in this. So yeah.
Oh yeah, I think he's amazing in this movie. I think it's fascinating too. The movies he seems the most natural in, I think, are this and Wolf of Wall Street, which is kind of funny.
Just any time that he is required to be a con man, he really excels.
Okay, but Marty's definitely seen this movie because the fucking pen scene in Wolf of Wall Street
totally.
feels like a perfect parallel back to this. But yeah, I got more to say about this, but. Yeah, I think this is fun. I thought it was fun before, but I think there's a hell of a lot going on here that I didn't see when I first saw this.
All right, Bill Graham, what about yourself?
So I'm pretty sure I didn't catch this in theaters. I watched it probably about 7-8 years ago for the first time. I don't know if that roughly translates to when this was actually released, like on DVD or not.
No, this came out 18 years ago.
18 years ago. Okay. So it's been a little while. So I saw this about probably 10 years ago. I really enjoyed it then. I didn't remember all that much, which, Goldfish Brain Bill shouldn't be too surprising. I forgot how many fucking people are in this film that you recognize, and you're just like, holy shit, is Jennifer Garner playing a hooker? What is going on in this movie? It's just one of those things where Spielberg just doesn't waste his opportunity to cast a face, and he's just really, really good at that kind of stuff. Let's see what else about this movie. I think it is too long. I will say that up front, but that is also, rewatch this late at night. Probably not the best idea. Uh, you know, but that being said, I think it's got a ton of momentum. It's got a ton of heart throughout, and yeah, I think the entire cast is just really, really on their game. I really like Christopher Walken's father figure here. He's dynamic in a way that you don't really expect. He's constantly looking for his next big score. He reminds me a lot of like a bank robber kind of on his last limbs. But yeah, I really enjoy this film. I've enjoyed most of Spielberg's films. I mean, I'm sure that's very controversial, right? But yeah.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I like Spielberg's films too. So.
Yeah, I'm a fan of this movie. This movie's pretty good. I feel like I first saw it right after it was released on DVD. Like my parents got it from Blockbuster, and then I remember that they actually bought the DVD from Costco. I don't know why that sticks out in my brain as a thing that happened.
Not 10 of them?
No, you only got one, but it was still cheaper than you'd expect.
No, Sam's Club and Costco, like movie purchases, like pivotal for me, Brian. We could do a whole episode about that alone.
Let's go through all the movies that we bought at Costco.
Interesting.
I bought Arrival at Costco. I bought 28 Days Later at Costco. It's very weird. So yeah, I'm a fan of this movie. This movie's pretty good. I think that when I first saw it, I was a lot more enamored with it than I am now. I don't know if I've cooled on it due to familiarity or because of my like increasingly strained relationship with both Steven Spielberg and Janusz Kaminski. But I think that everything that I liked about it still exists in this movie. I do still find its weird structure a little off-putting at times. I kind of don't dig how it opens with a flash forward to a flashback to yet another flashback. And I like it's not a new thing to say even on this episode that the movie goes on 20 minutes longer than you expect it to. I think that the things that it does in that 20 minutes are great, but I feel like you could pare it down and streamline it a bit so that it doesn't feel so extraneous, but you have to like just know academically that all the things that it's trying to say are encapsulated there.
Yeah, that's true.
But in general, I mean, like, you know, Leonardo DiCaprio is charming as shit in this movie. He's amazing. I think that Christopher Walken has never walked a tighter rope between like
God damn it, Brian.
What?
You said Christopher Walken walked.
I am so sorry. I did not mean to do that. At least I haven't like busted out a Walken impression yet. I'm sure that'll come later in the episode. He
fight us.
Dear God. The last time I did a Christopher Walken impression on this show, I think was for The Jungle Book.
Yeah.
Way back when.
That's
I think
part of that movie, though.
as the giant orangutan.
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
Yeah. The way that Christopher Walken says "man cub" changed my life forever. But I think in this movie he does a really good job towing a line between, I don't want to say pure evil or malevolence, but like a corrupting bad influence and a man who appears to be just like a harmless little coot. I think that the relationship with the dad in this movie is perhaps unsurprisingly, since it's a Spielberg film, like the richest text to draw from, as far as I'm concerned. And yeah, it's just fun to see this parade of other actors come through and just respond to the whirlwind madness that is Frank Abagnale Jr.'s life. I'm sure we'll talk more about the plot and stuff in depth. So, you know, I'm not coming in with a hot take that this movie is garbage. For anyone who is hopeful that I might, you know, spring that on people. But yeah, I don't know. I'll probably be the coolest on it, but it's still like a grand rollicking old time. Yeah. Has not aged poorly. In fact, it's only aged better because of how many people you see in this movie who went on to like just the fact that Amy Adams is like the candy striper that he falls for. And just remembering like 2002 Amy Adams and how like insane of a crush I had on her after seeing this movie.
It's so funny because
Brian De Palma helped him cast in this because he was busy with Minority Report.
Oh, really?
So he basically like did the auditions for Amy Adams and Jennifer Garner when he was when he was doing I guess when he was about to release Minority, or when he was still in post for Minority Report, I guess. Which is pretty cool.
Such a Spielberg story. Like every time you hear about him, it's like, so yeah, he was shooting this one movie while he was still editing another one.
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of his classic deal, right? Is he'll kind of stop and take a break for a little bit and then just kind of roar back with a vengeance, and he'll have multiple things kind of in the pipeline always going. Because I mean, I'm sure nowadays he can probably get things off the ground fairly easy, just by having his name attached to it, period. And so, even back then, I'm sure he still had a lot of that kind of command where he can just, all right, I'm ready to work now. Here's 3 movies. This is what I want to do. It's just like, Jesus, man.
No, it's nice. It's really fun. It allows for good times in the theater every year. He does that, so.
All of his double movie years. Though I don't know, it doesn't always lead to good times in the theaters, lest we forget Ready Player One.
God, no. Let's not talk about that fucking.
Let's only talk about Ready Player One and how.
Neil, you're a fan of Ready Player One.
I'm a big fan of that one, actually.
Oh no.
Okay, let's quickly move on. Quickly move forward.
So this movie. I think it's also interesting to note that like this was a big return for Leonardo DiCaprio.
Yeah.
Who had kind of just disappeared for a little while after Titanic.
Well, he did The Beach.
Yes, he did.
He did The Man with the Iron Mask, which is a movie I really liked when I was a kid, but I'm pretty sure it's terrible.
Yeah, that's one of those ones that I refuse to go back to.
Yeah.
It's not quite worth it for me.
Yeah. And then he did, I guess what happened, because he shot Gangs of New York in 2000. But it got delayed a year because of 9/11.
Yes.
And then in the meantime, so Catch Me If You Gangs of New York came out like in the same month, I guess, or the same
week, I think it is, of Gangs. Yeah.
Personally, I think one performance is a lot better than the other one, but I don't know if anyone is going to, unless you guys ride for DiCaprio's Gangs performance.
I ride for, okay, so they were released literally 5 days apart.
Wow.
Gangs of New York came out on the 20th. Catch Me If You Can came out on Christmas Day. I like Gangs of New York more, but I do think that Catch Me If You Can is a better performance from DiCaprio. Right. I think that he's fine enough in Gangs of New York to carry it, and is luckily surrounded by a bunch of crazy characters like Brendan Gleeson wielding a shillelagh, and Daniel Day-Lewis cutting people's ears off, and Hellcat Maggie eating people's ears off.
I don't like DDL in that movie at all.
Whoa, wait a second. You don't like Daniel Day-Lewis in Gangs of New York?
In Gangs of New York, no. I think he's really obnoxious.
Oh my God, you're a horrible human being. How could you say that to me now?
We could also talk about Don's Plum, and we just skipped right over that.
That's a movie that like never truly got released, right?
Which movie, sir?
Don's Plum.
I don't think so.
Yeah,
it's out there.
What the fuck is that?
It's like a student film thing that like one of his friends made that he was in, but like never got released.
Oh, fun.
Because it's like terrible. Back to Daniel Day-Lewis in Gangs of New York. Michael Snydell, what is wrong with you?
Yeah. We can move on. Move on.
The mustache and the hat alone. But yes, so he comes back, and it's interesting that he he kind of hits this double whammy, this double play of like, one of them, I'm gonna be the good-looking, charming kid from Titanic, but like, you know, with a little bit of an evil twist. And in the other one, he's like, I'm gonna be in a serious, rock'em sock'em, violent Martin Scorsese movie. And he never works with Spielberg again, but he kind of starts hitting Catch Me If You Can notes and like a small amalgamation of Gangs of New York notes in a shit ton of movies with Martin Scorsese.
Yeah, that's true.
Because 2 years after Catch Me If You Can is The Aviator.
Yeah.
Well, does Spielberg have any of those frequent collaborators?
Sorry, can you say that again?
Does Spielberg have any of those frequent like actors that he keeps returning to?
I guess Hanks, really.
Yeah.
I can't think of many others.
Hanks, he did 2 movies with Tom Cruise.
That's right, yeah.
But then Tom Cruise went a little crazy.
Yeah, that's...
As one does.
You know, when you... I'm not going to start slandering Scientology. Yeah, I'm trying to think. Steven Spielberg... Like, who are the people that he's worked with the most? I guess it really is just kind of Hanks, right?
It's really more, yeah. He really kind of spends more time with crew guys, like Kaminsky, obviously, and like Lacan editing.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of actors, he's pretty much interchangeable.
I was going to say
Hanks.
Janusz Kaminski is his favorite guy.
I know you have a bone to pick with Janusz in a number of things. I know you're not wild about like Bridge of Spies, but I believe that's you, right?
So here's my thing. I like many movies that he has made with Janusz Kaminski, but I like them in spite of Janusz Kaminski being a part of it. Like if I had it within my power, I would drown Janusz Kaminski in a pool of light. Like I find that many of his visual choices to be just annoying to the extreme. Which I know, I don't even know if that is technically an unpopular opinion. I don't know if people like ride hard for Janusz, but I just can't. I just don't like it.
What is it about this film in particular? Is there any kind of pet peeves that
I don't like
are in this one?
Like when they're in his apartment or at his like school, and again there's just like the overwhelming like milky white light that's coming from seemingly nowhere and like blowing out all the windows.
Yeah, he does that all the time.
Yeah, there's just something about it that's like it's so consistently there in everything that I start to wonder, like, is this a choice you're making because it says something, or do you just like the way it looks? You know, like when I see something with Toll or Deakins or even, you know, Lubezki, I can usually see that the choices being made in cinematography are being adapted to say something or fit into the story.
Right.
But like Janusz Kaminski could be shooting like just, I don't know, a butter commercial and would still be like, I think that we need many pools of light. I have no idea what Janusz Kaminski sounds like, so I went sort of Polish German with a little bit of Swiss.
Just vague neutral.
European, I think, is what I went for.
He's foreign. He's foreign for sure.
I should have just given him an Australian accent.
I like Kaminsky, but I can totally see why people wouldn't.
Right, and that's like, the thing. Like
he's like this weird cross between like Robert Richardson that doesn't always mesh.
Can you broke up for a second there? Can you say what he's a cross between?
Oh, just kind of like a cross between like Vittorio Storaro and like Robert Richardson, but in like a cross that doesn't always kind of mesh. And I totally bet like most of his choices, at least his work with Spielberg at least, because he also shot funny people and it looks totally like normal. But with Spielberg, it's always very stylistic, kind of like tones. It's all about like the kind of tone of the scene with like some kind of visual ornamentation that usually is just like a random pool of light. But I guess that's what he likes. So I don't know.
He loves it. He goddamn loves it. Yeah.
I do like the color timing throughout Catch Me If You Can actually more than most of their films, I admit. Just
So,
in terms.
My issue is like, so I remember the first time I noticed the Janusz Kaminski of it all, especially in terms of Pools of Light, was in Minority Report. But there it was like, it's the future, baby. Like, of course there's pools of light. Like, of course it's bright as shit and all this other stuff. Like, it's the future. It's just weird looking. You know?
And he did War as well.
Right, and then Catch Me If You Can has the same kind of vibe, and I'm like, it's the 50s or 60s. Like, why are we still light pooling? And then the Terminal, and I'm just like, I guess, you know, because it's like a big, like the sterile open air environment of like a terminal. Maybe that's why. And then War of the Worlds, I'm like, I guess it's because there's aliens.
And no, it's interesting. Yeah, it does become the standard weirdly after Minority Report in ways I don't fully understand why. But I don't mind it personally. I'm not against how it looks, but I understand one's qualms.
Yes, and the qualms exist, and I just felt like I had to get them out. And now I have, and we don't have to talk about Janusz Kaminski anymore.
Well, I think
you now pronounced his name like 5 different ways.
We did. I think there is something interesting to be said about Kaminski's work here, Brian. I don't quite. So much. I don't quite have the irritation levels with you of the milky pool of lights. Milky pools of light. I hate that phrase, Brian.
I am so sorry. You're going to have to say it a bunch now.
But I think that Catch Me If You Can is this really interesting tension between kind of that caper quality, the brighter, but brighter isn't quite what I'm looking for. That kineticism and that certain, 60s quality, like all of those things are aesthetic touches that they could lean into, especially when you think about how this story seems to, as I was saying, it feels like very much an avatar for that time. So many of these characters are representations of these certain beliefs in the world or something. And it could have leaned further into that, but I liked how so much of it looks drained. Like it was kind of interesting watching this with my partner, and, I kind of sold this to her being like, this is kind of a fun caper. And once we got to, some of the parental fractures and things like that, she's like, this isn't quite a caper. It's there's always this like churning undercurrent of things that aren't working out.
Yeah, it's a very like desperate movie in a lot of ways, or at least it's really sad, like kind of as subtext.
Yeah, because like the movie basically posits that all of this is just his way of not dealing with his parents' divorce.
Sure. And I kind of love how Brent, sorry. I just wanted to say, like, and we can get into this, and even one of the main jokes hinges on this. Hank's over and over asking, how did he pass the bar? How did he pass the bar? And you're assuming it's going to be some, magic or, equivalent of ingenious magic trick or something along those lines. And it's not. Like, you don't really see, as much as there's a few sight gags, about him being a doctor and the great thing where he has the, tongs in his mouth trying to get himself to not throw up while looking at the boy with the bone coming out. Like, it's not really a movie where you're seeing like the goofy possibilities of these jobs. A lot of his like counterfeiting and identity switches are like in a hotel room, him doing very precise things with seals and like crossing out numbers on checks. Like it's such an unromantic way to show this in a way, and that's what really struck me. And again, I'm not trying to bring back the Kaminski conversation, Brian, but here I would say it does feel tonally motivated, even if you're not sure why that milky pool of light is in that scene.
And one thing too, with him studying at the end, or like being like, no, I just studied it. It makes, just makes so much sense. If you can get away with all these other things, of course you can just study for 2 weeks and then pass the bar. Because that's if all these other positions are that easy to break into, you know. So, and it just plays into this whole thing of like break through everything, literally break, which is really fascinating about this movie. So of course you're gonna kind of cross every bar. And the thing too with like the family stuff, it's like one of the core, you know, obviously the core themes of Spielberg is this total, not ambiguity, but I guess ambivalence towards like the traditional family unit. And here it's like, and especially with, you know, Spielberg's parents who are divorced, so on, you kind of, how do I put this? Like the whole thing becomes about trying to make the fiction or like that vision of the world real again. He always wants to get his parents back together. And at first you kind of strikes you as like, what? And you really, he's only like 16, 17, so he's not an adult. And because like he wants to make this fiction into like reality. By doing so, he shows the fiction of all these other, you know, positions in order to get there. It's very, very sophisticated, I think. Oh, hello?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh,
So I'm going to say something that might be controversial. I actually find his motivation being just getting away from his parents to like suck most of the interest out of this movie for me.
That's fair.
Like I think it would almost be more interesting if he was just like, I was always a big fish in a little pond and God, I wanted to get out there. I wanted to make something of myself. And like the idea that he just like has this breakdown, then constantly comes back and is like, hey, Dad, when are you going to talk to Ma again, Dad? And
he's like 15. A kid. But I get it, though. It's fair. It's weird seeing DiCaprio do that.
It's just a little, like I and maybe it's again, maybe I accepted it more when I was younger because I didn't know that DiCaprio had anything else in him. But like now, I'm like, kind of wish I saw some Jordan Belfort in this kid. Like he's clearly enjoying himself, but there's something about his like neediness to like get his family back together. That's like, I'm just like, there's a part of me that keeps thinking like, you know, at some point, like, does he get like, how is he doing all this stuff and not getting a little jaded? The movie doesn't appear to be about him being a seemingly sweet kid who somehow keeps his like gosh shucks attitude despite the bad world around him. Like he's clearly a lying, cheating, thieving con man at heart. It's just it is, and this is, you know, one of the things that Spielberg does. It's such a Spielberg move to be like, but he's just a kid who misses his pop, you know?
Yeah. Well, I think also it's a bit more complicated. Not really, actually, not at all. I think, and the reason he's not come off as like more Belfort is Spielberg totally really like. He's like, yeah, you get away with that. You know, he's very
scamp.
Then he, sorry?
Just like Spielberg tousling his hair and saying, "You little scamp."
No, it's exactly. That's why you see him. There's way more kind of. I don't know if empathy is the right word, but Spielberg likes Abagnale way more than say Scorsese likes Belfort. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so that's kind of why he's just like he's also way more charming than Belfort too. Both to like.
Well, I mean, Belfort is a criminal in a very different sense, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so I think this one for Abagnale, I think his whole idea keeps getting tied into the fact that like he does miss his family, and that's what like Hanks at one point like calls him on, and that's one of my like. I love that dynamic and I love that relationship because what it reminded me so much of is Killing Eve, in that like they kind of each have each other's number. They're each kind of playing with each other at certain moments. You know, just the simple fact that like Hanks saw him, got his, you know, tracked him down so quickly. I say so quickly. I mean, relatively quickly. And, you know, I love the fact that like he shows up at, what is it? Not the Copacabana, the Tropicana,
Right.
Sure. And, you know, shows up and is just fascinated I love that sequence, and I love the fact that they kind of tease each other. And I mean, even so much as having Hank's like his gun is shaking, and you're just like, no, you cannot kill this 16-year-old boy. Like, what are you doing? Put your gun away. But of course, he's got no idea, right? Like he doesn't have a clue. The other thing I love about this film is that the fact that he like uses a pseudonym from the Flash means that he's a boy. It's just what? Like, what do you mean that means he's a boy? Like,
that is the most 2002 aspect of this. It's like, oh, this person, like, is of course it's comic books. He must be a child, and nowadays you'd be like, I don't know, we're looking for a straight white male between the ages of 12 and 45.
Well, I do love that he gives the FBI description, and the guy's just like, what do you mean? Between 5'10" and 6 foot and white with like brown eyes and brown hair, and you're just like, what are you describing to me right now?
Yeah, when you break Leonardo DiCaprio down to his component parts, he sounds pretty normal.
Yeah.
But then you put them all together and you're like, oh no, that's a beautiful man right there.
Yes. Yeah. It's there's just so many fun aspects in this film of like the Hanks performance just in general. What it reminded me so much of is actually Birds of Spies.
I saw that too.
His quiet confidence that he's going to get the job done. And there's that scene early on. I'm not sure if he's spelling his own name, right, to the French officials or whatever. Mm-hmm. But like Spielberg spends like that's a 2 minute, or not even it's like a 90-second sequence where he's just like over and over trying to spell his name. You're just like, this is so unnecessary, but it's so fascinating that he just has that tick where he's like, nah, I'm going to spend just this little extra effort of like this cinematic touch, right?
Yeah, totally. That's how you know.
Well, yeah, because he really wants to show that Hanratty is like a guy who is hemmed in by but also thrives within bureaucracy. So whereas Frank would be like, I'm going to turn heel on these guys, take a powder, and find something more interesting to do. Hanratty is like, all right, I'm just going to keep repeating my name until the wheels of bureaucracy grind this red tape apart, and then I can finally get my warrant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's the one. That's like the core difference between Frank and Abigail, actually, too. Because like even at the end, especially when their relationship at the time is very interesting, also. Like even at the end when they're getting on the plane. And he's like Frank still thinks that Hanratty's daughter's like 4, but she's like 10 now. But it's like time hasn't changed for Frank because he's literally spending all his time doing whatever he wants, and so it just doesn't exist for him. Whereas Frank's being hemmed and thriving in that bureaucratic manner, never like literally doing the job. Whereas and so like he's always like aware, obviously, that Frank isn't doing any job at all. He's just having fun all the time. And so he's like, wait, no, of course she's still 4. What do you kidding? But she's not, It's really interesting.
Hanratty's interior life is that he has no interior life.
He's got that one knock-knock joke.
Yeah, it's true, actually.
The one F word in the movie. Yeah. I love it.
Yeah. No. It's really, really interesting.
Is this movie rated PG-13?
Spielberg. I think it is.
I believe it has to be.
Yeah.
There's a little bit more sex in it than I was kind of expecting.
But it's very PG-13 sex.
It is.
The dinner or not the dinner. The room service tray is bouncing, and everyone's making out with their clothes on.
I didn't remember the. And I'm not saying this as a bad or good thing, but I just didn't remember how kind of played up and almost like berserk all of the female characters are in this. You have Elizabeth Banks from the beginning, but then the Jennifer Garner scene, but even Amy Adams, like just they're occupying such extremes of what you expect of kind of like those archetypes.
Sorry, can you say that again? I just got cut off for a second.
No, you're all good. What I was saying is I wasn't expecting the female roles to be kind of as like berserk and heightened as they were, in relation to Elizabeth Banks is kind of the first person who he slick talks, but then even someone like Amy Adams who is kind of that opposite of the sex pod character.
Right.
Like she's still very much in that opposite extreme. That
right.
Like the archetype of kind of the '60s women, and it's I just hadn't remembered. I almost want to go back to that period, trying to understand a little bit more about whether some of those female roles like have any of these characteristics. And we haven't mentioned at all that like the scriptwriter on this is Jeff Nathanson, who's had a truly bizarre career since Catch Me If You Can. Like, so after The Terminal, then he went on to he went on to Rush Hour 3, Crystal Skull, Tower Heist, the fifth Pirates of the Caribbean, and then that new Lion King.
That's odd. No. Wow, he did. He also did Rush Hour 2 and Speed 2. One of those movies is not.
Is he pretending to be a screenwriter? Is this what the
I don't know.
It's on us.
I cannot believe that there's like legitimately he gets a screenplay credit for The Lion King.
Yeah, I just saw that too.
That just is still infuriating to me because I remember we talked about that during our Lion King episode. We were like, he just changed 2 lines. What the shit? I mean, yeah, it's weird because this movie, I would say, is pretty classical, Hollywood screenwriting.
Yeah.
And I don't know that I can say the same about most of the other things that he's done.
Rush Hour 2, classical screenwriting.
I would say that
he also did 2.
Oh, okay.
Just based off of this and The Terminal, it's clear that he hates women. The Terminal being the movie where like Zoe Saldana agrees to like immediately marry someone who's never talked to her. And Catherine Zeta-Jones screams that she's sick because she's incapable of loving Victor Dvorsky.
How do you remember this from The Terminal?
I have seen The Terminal like twice, and it is burned into my brain.
Wow.
Yeah.
Was it the Milky Pools of Light?
Yes, the Milky Pools of Light really helped to drive something into my my mind. But yeah, I don't know. It was funny though because we had talked earlier and someone had said that how different Abagnale and Jordan Belfort are, but like just in terms of like people who use like a kind of script to bilk money from people who they assume can afford to lose it and get like a kind of weird sort of cult following and who, womanize. They're very similar people. It's just that one of them is a teenager who's being directed by Steven Spielberg.
And the other's a sociopath.
But I mean, can you say that Frank Abagnale Jr. is not a sociopath?
Well, I mean, the fact that he can't stop himself from doing this over and over and over just is a huge cry for help, right? The fact that like he eventually, I think, and I don't know if this is classic Spielberg or just a classic like different take on this, but like I almost find his life after this film more fascinating. To see how he interacts and see how he would eventually like become this expert on counterfeiting and things of that nature. And it obviously it makes sense, right? Like he got so good at his craft that like Tom Hanks's character had to like go to like these these like old school like just printing people who like sniffs his checks and just like, oh yeah, no, this is real good. Like this is better than what the banks produce. And you're just like, what is that? Like, how has he gotten this good? And I think, yeah, like I said, he is so incapable of just stopping. And you wonder, there's this moment when he's calling Hanratty and
on Christmas,
on no less. Yeah, on Christmas Eve, and saying, "Look, like, just stop chasing me. I'm done. I don't want to run from you anymore. I don't want this anymore." And Hanratty's just like, "That's not how this works. Like, you don't owe the government, like, or not just the government, all these different places so much money." I think at that time it was a little over $4 million. And, back in the 1960s, and you're just like, whoa, what does that mean now? Like that's $500 million probably, or something like that. But no, like all of that to say, I don't think he can stop. And yet this film ultimately posits that not only did he stop, he founded legitimate like business and made millions off of it. And you're just like, how does that work? Like, did he? And I mean, maybe it's just simply he was a fucking kid, and then he quickly realized, like, oh, the government's not actually just like a big bad bugaboo. Like, they're actually people, and they will actually come after you and actually throw you in jail. Like, this kind of sucks. So I think, I went through college where I was a dumb, and then, got into my adult years, still working on that. And, it's like you start to kind of settle down. And so I guess maybe that's Abagnale's kind of story, is like he was no longer a dum and decided to like actually make something out of his life. But like this film has a very kind of abrupt end where, like I said, I'm still waiting for part 2 to hear that explanation.
Well, what's weird is that like Jordan Belfort gets out of prison, also begins like a tour.
These are
as like
weird
a consultant.
Yeah.
But I think I guess where that loses me a little bit, and I understand what you guys are saying to an extent, but I do think that the postscript in this is kind of bitter. I mean,
yeah,
like,
I agree. Yeah.
Speaking of what I was saying a little bit earlier, like you could stop this as soon as he goes to jail and just switch to that postscript. But like I can't help but go back to a line earlier in the film where it's like, I think it's Hanratty who says it, and he's like, the house always wins. Mm-hmm. And like,
yeah.
Like Hanks is the house, and it doesn't seem like he has a real complex view of, bureaucracy or anything like that. But I think the film does. I think the fact that it doesn't just end with that postscript, like, really does separate it from the Jordan Belforts of the world. Like, Bill, I mean, you're really kind of making me wonder about an interesting question. Like, what did Frank think was going to happen? And you compare that to Jordan Belfort. I'm sorry that we keep jumping back and forth between these, but I think it's weirdly productive. I think that Jordan Belfort, like, he thought he was invincible. Like, he...
Yeah. At a certain point, once drugs were introduced to him, and sure, there's that
throws money at the CIA or the FBI, or I forgot.
Yeah, it's the FBI.
There's that sequence when he takes that ship, and against everybody else's like wishes and like console, and he's just like, nah, fuck it, like we'll make it, we'll get through this. And you're just like, no, that seems like a terrible fucking idea. like, you should not do this. And of course he does, and that ship crashes and all of that shit. So yeah, I think at a certain point he had so much money and had so much power and wealth that yeah, he felt he was invincible.
Sure. And I think like you compare that again to Catch Me If You Can. Like, for instance, when Hanratty picks him up at Marseille, and then he sneaks out under the sink in the bathroom, which is just great. But I love, for instance, that there's no doubt that he's going to be caught. But like, just the fact that all of the emotional urgency is the fact that he sees his mom having this new family. It's not a chase sequence. Yeah. It's not anything. It just smash cuts to this like emotional interlude. Like
he basically ran from the airport, wherever the hell he was landing, all the way to his mom's New York apartment. He's just like, okay, I guess, without shoes, I think, if I'm not mistaken. Like, you're just like, okay, all right. This is a very heightened version of this storytelling, but. Yeah, I mean, the only thing that breaks him is just seeing that little girl and realizing that, like, his mom is also that little girl's mom, which is also, like, how old is that mom? I was just like, whoa, okay. If you're
still having age stuff in here, yeah.
It's like, wow, all right. And I'm more impressed by her having a kid than this entire movie.
Oh, Jesus.
That's funny. But I think one important thing between Delfort and what's it called, Frank. It's like I think the main difference too is like Frank isn't doing anything as anything as like a job. He has no boundaries. These things. Why he's so addicted to these things too is entirely as a hobby. He's just enjoying himself so much. It's like he's literally just a kid playing games.
But there's a part of me
there's interesting. Oh, sorry.
Well, it's almost weird that like Frank Abagnale Jr. his cons run a much higher probability of getting someone killed than Jordan Belfort's. If you really think about it.
Well, he's a very irresponsible guy for sure.
Yeah.
But I think about this quote from Spielberg too, from around when it came out. Like, he said, Frank's a 21st century genius working within the innocence of the mid-60s, when people were more trusting than they are now. And I don't think this is the kind of movie where somebody could say, a quotation marks, I have a career plan, which is just really interesting in terms of just like, he's just a kid enjoying his life.
Yeah.
It's fascinating.
As a fun thought experiment too, I'm going from I don't have a more solid source from this. I'm just going from Wiki, but apparently these are all names that were considered to direct this film before Spielberg decided to direct it.
Michael Mann, Brian De Palma,
David Fincher.
Cronenberg. Oh, okay.
Oh yeah, I remember.
Gore Verbinski, Lasse Hallström,
Hallström,
Milos Forman,
Milos,
and Milos Forman. Yeah, sorry, Brian. Milos Forman and Cameron Crowe.
Fincher might have been interesting, but I don't know about the rest.
Fincher's film would have been 4 hours and actually gone into the details.
Yeah.
They would have shown Frank Abagnale Jr. as the pure sociopath that he really is. Instead of pools of light, everything would be slightly green.
Yep.
The hurdy-gurdy man would play a lot. I'm just thinking of like Zodiac, but that's the thing. I feel like this is the kind of story that, and this is like kind of shows like the power of cinema, is that anyone else directing this, it's a very different movie. But Steven Spielberg is able to give it that kind of jaunty, joie de vivre stuff. I hear Cameron Crowe, and I think that that's basically Almost Famous. It's a teenager who's pretending to be something he's not, who's charting around the country. And I'm sure that the soundtrack would probably be a little better. And I don't know about Lasse Hallström and Milos Forman. I feel like those would be kind of cut and dry.
Yeah.
Just, I don't want to say boring, but very formally compliant.
I don't know. The People versus Larry Flynn is pretty great. So I might.
No. Performance good, but I just don't see how we'd work here necessarily. But also, I can't see outside the Spielberg version at the same time. So who knows?
Well, was there another one that I'm forgetting? Did we hit them all?
Gore.
Oh, Gore Verbinski. What was he doing around this time? He had done The Ring.
No, this is
Mouse Hunt.
002. Yeah, this might have been right after The Ring. Weird.
That'd be interesting. Yeah, that's
Poor
funny.
guy. Yeah. Making Japanese.
Now I need to look this up. Like, what would he have made right before this?
Was Weatherman around this time?
It's the Mexican was 2001. Mouse Hunt was 1997. And then The Ring was 2002, the same year as this. So he would have not made The Ring. He would have made, I guess the kind of jauntiness of Mouse Hunt might apply itself to.
Well, and so then he goes on to do Pirates in what, 2004?
2003.
2003.
Mouse Hunt's like a nasty, Mouse Hunt's a weird movie. Like that is a mean-spirited movie. So
maybe had he done this, he wouldn't have done Pirates, which basically reinvigorated his entire career.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know that you'd say reinvigorated, but he'd just done The Ring, which was a smash hit.
Yeah.
Sure, but I wouldn't say that he was. Well, I mean, I guess he did get a big budget Disney project, so I guess, yeah.
And then he made The Weatherman.
Different shape of the blockbuster at this moment.
Yeah, I forgot The Ring was actually like a big commercial success. Which
man, I saw that like 3 times in theaters.
It
kickstarted its own kind of reinvigoration of like just y'all like the Japanese horror movies?
It was 2002, so I was like 15-ish, 14, 15. The Ring was like go-to date movie for as long as it was in theaters.
Didn't they just remake that?
They made a sequel called Rings.
Yeah.
I thought they remade it like shortly or they made a sequel shortly after the first one.
There is indeed The Ring, then there's The Ring 2, and then there's Rings.
Okay. So Rings is officially another sequel.
So it's kind of a reboot.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was 2017.
I don't know how we got here, but I think to bring us back a little bit.
You got us here, Michael.
Well, I take no responsibility.
Just like Frank Abagnale Jr.
I was about to say, all right, Abagnale.
How many young boys must get their legs broken before you realize what you're doing, Frank?
Okay, Barry Allen.
No, I think it we are getting into something kind of interesting in talking in not only this thought experiment, but in getting I kind of agree with you, Brian, in the sense that the things that Frank does, they could lead to a lot of consequences. But I think that, again, that kind of speaks to the certain dissonance about Spielberg, and you could say this about any canon filmmaker because people love putting things in boxes, but it's Spielberg is always weirder than people give him credit.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely, yeah. It's literally a whole film's about breaking the law. It's just directly. That's what it's about.
And he's valorized. This is
yeah, exactly.
In no way is it ambiguous.
Yeah. It's just about breaking the law and Spielberg being yeah, this is awesome.
Yeah, the movie should end with that song, I Fought the Law, and it's just weird. I wonder if we were just in a place in society at this point where we were breaking the law is cool. Because I feel like nowadays, if we released a movie like this, people would be Catch Me If You Can valorizes the same type of people who brought us the Fire Festival in Theranos,
Don't do this. Don't do this.
No, it's possible.
This is definitely the Vice article of that, yeah.
It's completely plausible that would happen.
Yeah, I wonder if we've like lost our stomach for like charming con men. There is a part of me that wonders that. Like, in fact,
Robert Redford just had one, right?
The old man, the gun. Is that what you're
yeah. Well, he was a bank robber. He wasn't so much a con man.
Sure, but I mean that actually feels even more potent, right? Like because he was also doing it. How like he was doing that?
It's
What?
like in the
Not
80s.
that.
Yeah.
In the 80s? Okay, yeah. So,
But he was seen as a Robin Hood, and I think you'd have a harder time viewing this as a Robin Hood story. Or,
I mean, Pan Am, probably a Robin Hood.
No, because he's not like giving tickets to underprivileged people in the cities. He's just running around the country and Europe himself.
Sure. Yeah,
Brett, I feel like you're annoyed.
He's spending all the money on himself.
I just need to keep us on this like moral track so we don't ever have to talk about Janusz Kaminski again.
I don't give a shit about the airlines and the cops. Like, never was I like, oh, I feel bad for Tom Hanks.
I sort of did feel bad for Tom Hanks. One of the things that I remember at the end of this movie, even watching it as a 15-year-old, is when Frank is gonna run away again after he's been given this chance. I was just like, I don't care about this kid. This kid sucks now. Like, there's just something like, how many opportunities does this kid have to be given before, like, he's smart, he's handsome, he's charming, he's like running around doing whatever the fuck he wants, and I'm supposed to feel bad that he can't get his shit together enough to cop to the terms of his plea deal?
That's some 30 or 15 going on 30 kind of revelations there, Brian. That's great stuff. But
there was a part of me that was just like my jealousy boiled over, and I was like, I cannot deal with this right now.
I do not disagree. I think that's how you say it. I absolutely agree that I was very annoyed watching it this time when he takes off for the airport in that final sequence. I was just like, you fucking dum-dum. Like, you just got out of jail. You're working in a 9 to 5 at the fucking FBI. Like, you have a very cushy position right now, and like nothing is wrong. Like, I'm sure they are taking care of you very well. Maybe you're not making a lot of money because you're still serving out a jail sentence, but like, I'm sure they're not going to let you starve or do anything bad. So yeah, like, you just figure, okay, now you got a desk job. Like, suck it the fuck up. Like, most kids around this time would fucking love to have that job at like 19 while also living all of that extra. Like, you did so much shit that like would fill a lifetime in a couple of years. And
but I feel like he almost got like a sample plan. I guess that's not a good argument against what you're saying.
More.
No, but I'm saying that, I don't know. Yeah, he's handsome. He has a good job. Like, I see where you guys are coming from. That it's a pretty stalwart argument against. Feel bad for him.
This is only coming up like as I'm older, looking at this, right? Like these are those kind of. Yeah, I know. Yeah, 15 going on 30. You're already thinking about your 401k. But no, like. It's so fascinating as you watch these movies as you get older, and then also understanding like the people that made these are also older than you are. So and you're like, okay, so what is their viewpoint? Like when I turn 40, am I going to have a completely fucking different viewpoint than what I have, now? And so it's just fascinating how a movie like this can kind of warp over time. It's what is it? The classic, like, the you bring to the movie more than like what it brings to you, or something like that. It's just like, yeah, it's all about your viewpoint and your timeline currently and how you kind of interpret some of this stuff, where you're just like, Frank, fucking suck it up. Like, wear a suit to work. It is going to be okay. You will be just fine. You work for the government now. Like, this is going to be a pretty cushy job.
So I didn't think this when I was 15, but watching it recently, I did think, I was like, man, I can't believe he's running away from that kind of job security.
I know, that's what I'm saying.
But here's the thing. Okay, I wanna bring this back to, like, let's look at this movie in context. Like, 2002, we'd just been through 9/11, wasn't a great time. I think that the kind of pure escapism of this movie really played well. I'm curious though, like, the way that society has changed over the last 18 years is, I feel like if this movie were indeed released today, like I already said, like, you know, the kind of hot take culture that would brand Frank Abagnale Jr. the next what was his name, McFarlane, or you know, voice change over at Theranos. Elizabeth, I can't remember her name. I also wonder, like, if this is the type of thing where, like, people would rail against this movie and basically, like, remember how when we watched Good Time, we called it, like, Toxic White Privilege the movie.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like this movie would kind of get branded with that same kind of brush. Like, this is...
I just don't know, because Spielberg is so pulp and so pop that I feel like this movie is just rubber, right? And it won't sustain those kind of hits. I mean, the films that we're comparing it to, Good Time is a dirty fucking sweaty ass mess that makes me want to go take a shower for like 5 days.
What if Frank Abagnale Jr. had no charm, no class, and no intelligence,
and some raggedy ass teeth? Yeah, sure, maybe. I don't know.
Were his teeth bad in that movie?
I thought his teeth. I think his teeth are bad in that movie.
I don't want to speculate what the discourse is, because that makes me want to put my head through a wall. But what I would rather say is, I think that there is, if this was made now, I think on the surface this would be a more bitter movie. I think what is interesting about the way that I seem to be coming at this differently than especially you, Brian, is, like, I feel like this movie... So it's two things, because it is, one, a piece of escapism starring a ridiculously handsome person who makes it through anything. But it's also a movie that has no respect for the actual institutions that existed. It has not only it's not only disrespectful, but it believes that a person can't make it. Like, this is this is the Gatsby. You know, like I think, for instance, of the great scene where Christopher Walken, where Frank and his dad are at the fancy restaurant. I think this is the scene, and Frank is literally repeating his own success story about how he met Frank's mother. And he needs to, like, literally convince himself that that was real and wasn't something he just imagined. Like in its own way, like, going back, I guess, to this idea of a sampler, like, Frank's motivations are, other than the one moment where he seems like he's kind of partying in LA, his, like, day-to-day life doesn't seem that particularly satisfying. Like, stay with me for a sec.
That LA party looks like it sucks too, because
it does suck ass.
He is a kid who got bullied by his friends into throwing a house party and is so concerned about what's gonna happen to the house. He's like, you know, you don't turn. It's like a reel to reel. You can't turn it like it's a, like, thing, and don't, like, you know, be careful with the fondue. Like, Jesus Christ, this is Italian silk, and he's just like, he's so fucking upset about all the fun that everyone else is having. That's actually one of my favorite parts in the movie.
Like, the things he experiences, like, he almost wants to vicariously experience them with his family. Like, he doesn't give a shit about when he's talking about the Coupe de Ville again in that same dinner scene. It's not even when he's talking about it like, I love driving in that. It's, let's take a ride together. Let's go back to where we were. Like, it's pathetic in a way, but like all he wants is a time machine, even when he has this like total hedonism right in front of him. Like it's just not a very again, like I'll go back to the word romantic. Like I guess that's where it loses me on this idea that he's Leo. I don't feel bad for him. Like he's a delusional, but that doesn't mean that he is unlikable to me. I guess I guess those are two simultaneous things that are complete contradictions, but it's nonetheless where I specifically landed this time.
There's just a part of me that, it's weird because I can't even tell looking back how positive or negative we've sounded on this movie. I do think that there is something, and I think this is why I brought this all up to begin with. There's something intrinsic about Steven Spielberg. I don't know that he could ever make a movie about a protagonist that he did not personally like find some affection for.
Oh yeah, totally.
Even like Bad Dad Tom Cruise in War of the Worlds. Like still, Spielberg's like, he's not perfect, but he's trying, goddammit. He just murdered Tim Robbins in a basement for his little girl, and that means something.
And you want that cynicism to be at the point at some point.
I think that could help a little, yeah. Neil, what were you going to say?
Oh, I think it does kind of use that in War of the Worlds anyways to kind of a bit flip on it. I mean, it does pull from The Searchers, kind of that ending too, but yeah, actually I forgot what I was going to say, honestly. Actually, I completely kind of drifted.
Well, Brian, I'm curious just to bring it back to this family relationship, as this is, as we kind of been talking, it's a pet theme. It's all over. Mm-hmm. So I'm curious, is this a general barrier for you with how primary it is in Spielberg's films? Or I'm just trying to get a sense whether this is an outlier.
So like it's interesting to me because I was thinking about this today as I was thinking about this film. And I was like, what are the things that we think about when we think about Spielberg? And the first word that jumped into my head was dads. And it's like a joke, but it is a thing in all of his movies. Like he's even said that, like, I'm going to say this, it might be apocryphal, that if he remade Close Encounters of the Third Kind, he wouldn't have the dad leave now.
Yeah.
I've heard him say, I've heard it been said that he has said that. That's the most nonsensical way to put that. But it's just like he is obsessed with fathers. And like Martin Scorsese is obsessed with his relationship with Christ and the church. But that leads to, in my mind, a little more of an expansive open canvas you can work with.
Well, where's the father figure in Jurassic Park?
Grant doesn't want to be a dad.
Yeah.
Okay. Fair.
More in Lost Worlds.
Yeah, in Lost Worlds, Malcolm is in fact a father who does not want to be a dad.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, no, I mean, like in all, I guess maybe there's clearly movies that I won't be able to answer this for. Like, I don't think I've ever seen 1940 whatever.
1941.
Amistad, I cannot recall what if there was a fatherhood component in that.
Sure.
But I mean, like Lincoln becomes very much about his relationship with his son, and his dead son, and all this other stuff.
I think it's It's not that I feel like after Crystal Skull is when he starts to de-emphasize it. After that film, he seems to be less interested. I find
again because he gave Indiana Jones a son. It's just
but after that, it kind of like even in Lincoln, it's less. It's kind of a side thing really than as like any significant subtext.
That's kind of the funny thing is that, like you said, it's not really subtext. It's like he's just like, okay, I clearly like Dad, so if you could just make a C plot, then maybe can take it over. But even in like Bridge of Spies, it feels like he a little bit is like, trying to make it so that Tom Hanks feels a little bit fatherly-ish towards like the people he's trying to get out. I haven't seen The Post. Ready Player One is a nightmare, but that guy doesn't have a dad, so
there's no father figure in that one, so that's why it doesn't work.
Well, I think that all of the people think that the weird dude who died, who's played by the British character actor that everyone loves,
Rylance.
Oh,
Rylance. So Halliday,
Yeah,
I just looked up the character name.
He
He's
definitely
like,
has a father figure kind of feel.
right. He is the father to all these people because literally he has imparted all of his
that's
loves
true,
on
yeah.
these people who are like his children.
Yeah.
And then
That's
that
huge.
is it is funny though that they didn't actually give Wade an actual like father, because then when he's trying to avenge a parental figure, he says, "You killed my mom's sister." Which is the least badass line of like vengeance ever.
Yeah.
I need to rewatch that one.
No, you don't.
I love that one.
Yes, I do.
God damn it. So that's a thing that happened. So I would say that like I don't mind it. I do sometimes wish that it weren't such a thing. I'm almost sort of wondered how West Side Story is gonna be. Like if they're just gonna change the lyrics to G Officer Krupke and it's just gonna be an entire song about how none of these people have strong father figures.
That's funny.
Oh boy.
Yeah. But
Okay.
I don't know. In War Horse, the horse is his dad.
We're getting a little.
Yes. I do want to say though
off
that
the
like
path.
one of the I was down on Spielberg for a while because there was a point when I was like it just seems so effortless for him to make a handsome, emotionally effective movie. There was a part of me that was almost like it's like not interesting anymore. But then of course like I got over myself and my cynicism. And I was like, if you see a guy who every day gets out there on a unicycle, sets himself on fire, and juggles 8 chainsaws flawlessly, it's not up to him to try to make that look difficult for you. You should always just appreciate the fact that he can do it.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
So
I mean,
I've gotten over that.
Yeah. That's a decent analogy, I guess.
Thank you.
Evolved analogy.
I can just see that guy waking up every morning and just being like, I don't know why I do the things I do, but man,
He
I
won
love
the
it.
lottery 3 years ago, and he doesn't have to do anything. He's like, I can finally do the thing that I love, which is setting myself on fire, getting on a unicycle, juggling chainsaws.
What is the timeline of those things happening? Does he set himself on fire first and then get on the unicycle? Does he start the chainsaws first and then get on the unicycle and then light him? Like, what's the timeline?
I will have to think about that. I will answer it in a tweet. Yeah, I think I'm gonna have to tweet about that when we release this episode. We have been talking for a while though. I did want to say, just in that kind of final way, like this is a super well made movie, as you expect from Steven Spielberg, and the music is just it's so good.
Oh yeah, that's great in this one.
John Williams. It is funny because this film reminds me so much because it is a classic throwback to those capers and to those kind of that era with like the full credits right in the beginning. I think it starts with the credits. Like you don't have
the Saul bass,
yeah, and so. Bass, yeah, the Saul Bass, and then like even like the John Williams score, because like Erica, my fiance, was like, "Who did this music?" And I was like, "It's John Williams." I didn't even have to look. I was just like, "Oh, I know." Like
it's a Spielberg movie. It's probably John Williams.
It reminded
me pools
so
of light are
much.
thanks to Janusz Kaminski.
I didn't mention that, but no. Like as soon as I heard the theme, I was like, "This reminds me so much of like Jurassic Park," in like just the way that it kind of thrums through and all of these notes and all of these kind of repeating motifs, and yeah, like I was just like, I love this music.
Well, what's interesting to me is that it doesn't feel like a John Williams at first, because like I'm used to John Williams being like fanfare and horns and bulk, and this has that super cool little woodwind instrument
trill. Yeah. I think it adds a little paranoia too. Like there's a certain anxiety that's underneath it all.
Yeah,
apparently where I've landed is now Catch Me If You Can isn't a fun movie. This is a serious movie about institutions, but yeah.
Great. Yeah. All right. Neil, any final thoughts before we wrap up that you wanted to get out that we haven't had time for yet?
Not really. I mean, the movie's kind of does. I think we mostly covered like little bits and pieces throughout. Anyways, got it. But yeah, no, it's a very very packed movie. Let's say with a lot of interesting ideas throughout it that can get away from if you because it's so enjoyable to watch. It's easy to skip over how sophisticated this movie actually is.
Yeah, it's almost like the performances and Spielberg's like, jaunty direction like do a disservice to like all the deeper stuff that could be thought, just because you're like so happy to just glide along on like the sugar-coated rush of all the caper stuff.
Well, no, I think it's all there. It's just, and that makes it almost fun to play with those ideas because it's all there. It's just enjoy. It's not so much a disservice as much as it just makes it even more fun to watch. I don't know. Yeah. That's how I think about it.
I think of it in the way that like people could watch this and never see those things because everything else that's just pure entertainment is so well done.
Oh yeah, totally. That's true too.
But I think that I've seen this movie more times than I can count because it is the type of movie that you can just turn on and watch like that, and it's so fun. Yeah. But also, those things are there. And as I said, this is the first time that I've ever thought about this movie in conjunction with like The Wolf of Wall Street and been like, I wonder. So I'm glad we were able to exercise that demon from me.
Oh yeah, that's fun.
Indeed.
Interestingly enough, too, Williams and Christopher Walken were the only thing nominated for Oscars in this, which is, I mean, trying to find a logic in the Oscars is a losing game, but still fascinated that those are the two things that were,
singled out.
Yes, thank you, Bill.
Uh-huh.
All right.
It is genuinely fun movie first and foremost, which is part of why it's so watchable, obviously.
All right.
Yeah. Frank's a good guy. I'm going to say it one last time.
I think Frank is a sociopath who never cared about anyone that he might have hurt, and I hope that Congress convenes an oversight committee to see why the federal government allowed a terrorist like him to work under their umbrella. No, I don't.
And to make our security systems.
I am sure that he will die unloved even by his friends. That is an in-joke for a tweet that existed for 10 minutes earlier this morning. Yes, so that's it. Michael Snydell, what are we talking about next week?
Oh, well, hold on. How many listeners do we have right now?
That's a great question. It looks like we might have one.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
We have had peaks and valleys throughout the course of this.
Nice.
I feel like it's weird because right now it's 9:45 p.m. Eastern time, right? So like some people on the East Coast are probably like, oof, it's time for bed. But people on the West Coast are like, oh man, it's dinner time. So I feel like this is just the worst possible time to record one of these and expect people to listen live.
Yeah.
But that's just what we do.
That's all good. Well, we'll see what happens.
People will catch us when we hit their pod feed
platform.
I don't know any of the terminology.
We have been doing a
podcast.
We have been doing a podcast for like, what is this? Like 5 years?
Yeah.
And you're like, I guess they can listen to it on their devices.
Their iPods.
And everyone boots up their Windows 2000 machine, sits down, opens Internet Explorer,
MS-DOS,
navigates to http://www.thefilmstage.com.
When they dial in.
Yeah. Yep. No, I mean, that's the funny thing is that I know that apps that listen to podcasts were for a time called podcatchers, but I'm pretty sure that if I said that in the streets, I would be shot by someone.
That sounds like an STD.
Podcatcher. You don't want to catch that.
That's the next piece of PPE we're going to be required to wear when we go to stores. Put on your mask, wear gloves, make sure you have a podcatcher. Oh boy, good times. Yeah, so let's let us wrap it up. Michael Snydell, what are we talking about next week?
I don't know, Brian. Did you? I was gonna like just make something up in that time you were talking, but I really have no idea.
All right, well, we'll figure it out. We'll tweet it out. Hopefully, we remember to do that because sometimes we don't. Hopefully, everyone who's listened to this has enjoyed it. If you have thoughts on Catch Me If You Can, reach out to us, podcast at filmstage.com, or find us on Twitter at filmstageshow. But yeah, we also brought to you by Mubi. Don't forget, you can get a free 30-day trial of Mubi by going to mubi.com/filmstage. The Last Laugh by F.W. Murnau is on there currently, along with Beanpole. And so many other things. There was another one that I saw. Oh, right. Dawson City Frozen Time is still on there. You have plenty of time to watch that. And that is a film that every time I bring it up, someone jumps out of the woodwork and screams at me that it's amazing. So I feel like I have to watch it.
It's a good film.
It's like a way to know if your internet is working, is just to like open your phone and type the words Dawson City Frozen Time. And someone will immediately reach out to you and say it's a great movie. Again, 30-day free trial. mubi.com/filmstage. So that's it. Let's tell the fine people at home where we can be found between now and the next time that we are in their ears. Let us start with our guests. Wow, for some reason forgot there was a T at the end of that word. Oh boy. Neil Bahadur. Where can people find you online?
You can just go to my Twitter account, so you can find me on Letterboxd or whatever. And yeah, it's very, very simple. Just search my name. You can hopefully dig through it in Google or something. I don't know. It's not hard.
In the show notes of this episode on your podcatcher, you will find a link to Neil's Twitter. So.
Oh, great. Okay.
All right, Bill Graham. What about yourself?
You can find me trying to make sure my little French bulldog doesn't overheat in this Texas heat on Twitter at CableBFG, and you can also find me mixing it up in the Slack channel. What's been going on in there lately, guys? I haven't been able to participate lately.
I was getting mad about Star Wars earlier.
Oh, Jesus. Come on, Michael.
It's Taika Waititi and the 1917 director or writer. Spare me.
Okay, I am not excited about the 1917 writer, but everything else about that still sounds good.
So literally the one other thing that you know about it, which is Taika Waititi.
Mm-hmm.
I loved that someone said that Birds of Prey had fake violence, and I got to do my favorite thing, which is to point out that all movie violence is technically fake.
And then I just logged off, and life was better.
One of my favorite jokes in Archer is when Cheryl says that's a made-up word, and someone says to her, "They're all made up," and she goes, "Whoa."
That's good.
And it's something I still say to people all the time. Michael Snydell. Oh wait, Bill, I have a question. What do you have to do to keep a bulldog cool? Like, do you shave them, or like, are they bad at self-regulating their temperature?
Oh yes, very bad. Any flat-faced breed. So part of their ability to dissipate heat from their body is through panting.
Right.
And so if you have a flat-faced dog, they don't have a long nasal passage, and so because of that, they're not able to dissipate heat nearly as well. And so you just take them on walks at inconvenient times. So at like 8:30 in the morning instead of whenever the fuck you want. So, that way it's like 73 degrees instead of 84, which, we'd make it down the street and back, and she'd be like, "Yeah, I'm done." Like my poor dog will sometimes just like find a nice shady spot like on our way back from walks and just like plop down on grass, and it's just like, "No, I'm good.
That's it.
This is where I stop." And you're just like, "Oh, okay." And so you pick her up, and she's 26 pounds of just muscle, and she doesn't like being picked up, and so she'll kind of squirm around, and then you put her back down, and then she plops back on the grass. This has been Bill's corner of how to walk a French bulldog.
Okay, so this reminded me of, and I swear to God we're wrapping up, but did you all watch Silicon Valley?
No.
Yes, I have.
Okay, so you saw the Gavin Belson thing. Consider the bulldog a grotesque monstrosity born of relentless inbreeding. riddled with sinusitis, crippled by joint pain, chronically flatulent, a kind pet, or humanity's cruelest mistake?
Yes. I went to the vet when she was still a puppy when quarantine wasn't happening, and the vet there is fairly well known, like in the local community, for kind of specializing in French bulldogs and just bulldogs in general. And he saw my Frenchie, and she was just shaking and giving all these excited little whimpers and just wanted to greet him so bad. And so he came over there and he was just like, "Oh, you're so sweet. You're exactly the reason why people will pay all this money and go through all this hassle, because it's all about the personality." Like, yeah. We do not give a shit about all their health problems and all this other stuff, because they're just delightful to be around. So
Ain't that cute?
Yes.
Okay, Michael Snydell, what about yourself? Where can people find you between now and the next time?
Well, I just started a new podcast, guys. So
yeah.
I started a film stage spinoff called Intermission, which will be a one-on-one focusing on art house, foreign, experimental films that are pretty much accessible. That's pretty much the only stipulation. Our first episode was with Ryan Swen, and was about Truffaut's Two English Girls. I'm actually recording the next one tomorrow with Scout Tafoya. About Melville's Le Cercle Rouge, and I'm not French, so I probably fucked that up. So yeah, that will be out later this week for Patreon people, and shortly after that for everybody else. And I have a review of Driveways, the new film from Andrew on Spool this week, and yeah, that'll be it. But please listen to Intermission if you get a chance. Two English Girls is actually on Criterion Channel. I highly recommend it. Ryan, I had never heard of it before, but Ryan being the person he has suggested it, and yeah, let me know if you hate it or love it.
Great. Yeah, kind of be fun. Okay, cool.
Yes, and I can be found at my personal site, brianjrowan.com. Every Instagram, Twitter, whatever, at brianjrowan. And again, if you could go to schmidtspirits.com, SHMIDT spirits.com, and give whatever you can to our GoFundMe so that we can help to give hand sanitizer to people who need it around our community. I would greatly appreciate it. But that is all for today. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us, and tune in next time.
All right.
And for some reason, the music isn't playing, so we're just going to say we're done. I don't know what's going wrong, but at least it went wrong all the way at the end and not while we were still recording.
Sorry. Nice.
Neil, thank you for your time tonight.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks, I appreciate it. It was fun.
Excellent.
Yeah, good.
Glad to hear it. And yeah, if I don't know when life gets back to normal, but if ever there is a movie that's coming out and you would like to talk about it, let us know and we'd be happy to have you.
Oh yeah. Well,
yeah, Neil, and if you'd like to talk about anything on Intermission, please reach out.
Oh yeah, I'll let you know. Yeah. Well, you'll see Tenet is we'll all get 6 feet away from each other when you still see Tenet in July. You know, right?
I'm still.
As long as movie theaters are still around by that.
No, yeah. We don't know.
AMC will have crumbled and Cinestate will have bought Alamo Drafthouse or something. I don't know.
That's already happened.
It only bought the Birth Movie's Death, right? It didn't buy Alamo Drafthouse.
Yeah. All right.
Oh, Jesus.
One
Okay,
day.
I was about to lose my mind. Okay, cool.
I need to fucking eat something, but